So recently, in part of Pokemon Presents, the Pokemon Company showed off a brand new Pokemon game. Prior to the game being revealed, there were rumors going around that the next set of Pokemon games were going to be named Pokemon Winds and Waves, which later ended up becoming true, as it ended up being shown for the first time in the Pokemon Presents last month. And so far, the game looks like it'll be a step up in terms of graphics, because with the last game, Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet, one of the complaints the game received was its graphics. People were not impressed with the graphics at its slightest. And the new starter Pokemon look pretty solid. Gecqua looks alright, Browt straight up looks like a green angry bird, and Pombon is just adorable. Okay, listen up, Game Freak. If you screw up Pombon's evolution, I will be a very disappointed camper. Anyways, in this video, I thought it would be fun to talk about my thoughts on the new Pokemon game, but also my wishes for the game. So without further ado, here's my honest thoughts and wishes on the Pokemon Winds and Waves trailer. Okay, so before I can discuss my wishes for the game, I want to start off with my thoughts based on the trailer we got. Well, first off, like I mentioned before, the game looks like a graphic improvement compared to Scarlet and Violet. That game received backlash from the way the game looks. It was a major talking point when it released, and it ended up getting a free Switch 2 version which improved visuals and frame rate. Pokemon Legends EA also got complaints surrounding its graphics even with its Switch 2 version, but that's basically almost every Pokemon game that's released in the past decade. Pokemon Winds and Waves looks like a great step up from Scarlet and Violet, which was the previous mainline Pokemon game, so that's good to see. Second, the starter Pokemon look very goofy. Gecqua looks something straight out of Little's Pet Shop, Browt is a green angry bird, and Pombon... Okay, listen up, Game Freak. If you screw up Pombon's evolutions, I will be a very disappointed camper. Honestly, I really like the silly designs. I still personally prefer Scarlet and Violet starters, but hey, these are still pretty good. I'm very curious about how the new Pokemon will look. Finally, the water. Well, Pokemon decided to add water to their new little Pokemon game, and personally that's a 7.8 out of 10. Honestly, that could have been an 8, but you know, too much water just really isn't needed. Okay, for some context, a long time ago, IGN gave Pokemon Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby an 7.8 out of 10, with one of the critics being too much water. When people saw this, it became a meme. When IGN posted Pokemon Winds and Waves screenshots, the official Pokemon account responded with a hilarious 7.8 out of 10, and people absolutely lost it, and rightfully so. Finally, I think the game has strong promises with the improved graphics, the silly little starter Pokemon, and the obscure amount of water. Well, that's basically everything surrounding my thoughts, but now it's time to discuss my wishes for Pokemon Winds and Waves. Alright, first things first, which I honestly think is definitely needed, is voice acting. Yeah, I know, you heard that take at some point, but I personally believe voice acting is something I feel like Pokemon can 100% benefit from. For starters, voice acting can add so much to a game. It adds so much charm, but when it's not there, it kind of feels lifeless and out of place, especially for cutscenes. For example, let's take a look at this scene in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Look how empty it feels without voice acting. It honestly feels so odd here, which is really strange to me because Pokemon is the highest grossing media franchise of all time. For example, it's made more money than Star Wars and Hello Kitty, and that's just a couple examples. You know, ever since the Pokemon series began, there hasn't been any voice acting throughout its entire history. Okay, but to be fair for that argument, with the first Pokemon games being Red and Blue for the original Game Boy, not having any voice acting made a ton of sense back then. The Game Boy wouldn't be able to handle it, as it would most likely be too much to handle, which makes sense. But with technology and games advancing and consoles getting more and more powerful as time progresses, it's honestly very surprising that they still haven't decided to put some voice acting. Throughout the entire time Pokemon has been around, it made so much money from merchandise, toys, and games, and their movies throughout its entire history. But they still choose not to include voice acting in any of their games at all, and I personally believe the Pokemon games could 100% benefit from it. Now, I know not everyone wants to see voice acting in Pokemon games, but like I mentioned, I honestly think it could heavily benefit from it. But that's just my input on this specific topic. Alright, second, I really want this game to be good and not repeat the whole Scarlet and Violet situation. Alright, I know, I mentioned Pokemon Scarlet and Violet plenty of times throughout this video, and I know this video is slowly starting to feel like Scarlet and Violet slander. Trust me, I do personally like some of what the game offers. I think the starters we got are awesome. Like I said earlier, I prefer Scarlet and Violet's starter Pokemon. I'm a big fan of the legendary Pokemon. I think they have cool designs, but the game has multiple flaws that made it disappointing when it released, at least in my opinion. Alright, my personal problems with Scarlet and Violet are simply how poorly it ran on the Nintendo Switch when it came out. I remember when Scarlet and Violet released, there was so much negative feedback and videos being made on it. It was a gigantic talking point, and it hasn't been for good reasons. I remember when I purchased this game when it came out, and while I personally found the glitches very funny since everyone was clowning on it, you could tell the game had some serious issues, which clearly led to intense backlash. For starters, we got the glitches. The game had so many glitches and many cursed images. People were able to go out of bounds fairly easily. The game was a complete disaster on launch. So many negative things were being said. It was a complete and utter chaos. But to be fair in my opinion, I found the glitches and bugs hilarious, but obviously that's not how you launch a game. There was very little polish with this game. You could tell this game was rushed to meet up with the upcoming deadlines, which ended up making the game look like a complete total mess. You see, while playing this game, you could see characters disappear in the background and things populated. As time progressed, Game Freak went in and slowly fixed the game's bugs and glitches wood by wood, until pretty much every glitch and bugs were removed. The game eventually got a free Switch 2 version. The game started to run at 4K dot and a consistent 60 frames per second. The Switch 1 version ran on 1080p dot and 30 frames per second, but it wasn't very consistent with constant frame drops, and that's basically my issues with Scarlet and Violet. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't hate this game, I just don't want another Scarlet and Violet situation. That's my biggest concern with this brand new Pokemon game, which I really hope doesn't happen again, and honestly, like I mentioned earlier, Winds and Waves seems like a complete improvement. Third, I hope the new gameplay mechanics are fun. Alright, with the previous game, I really liked the new mechanics it offered. I personally really liked how fun the legendary Pokemon functioned here. It was really fun watching them slowly evolve from a weak legendary Pokemon to a very powerful legendary Pokemon once it fully healed. Obviously, I don't think you're going to be doing the same thing you did with Cridon/Mydon, but with a new legendary, that would be a very odd decision to make. I wouldn't mind it. I hope however they use whatever their new gameplay mechanic is just as fun as the Scarlet and Violet legendary was to control. And looking at Pokemon Waves, it looks like we'll be able to go underwater. And I think that's an awesome idea, which I hope they execute well. Well, that's basically all my thoughts and wishes surrounding Pokemon Winds and Waves. I think this game has lots of potential to be a great game. Like I said, I really don't want another Scarlet and Violet situation. That would be terrible. Let's do a recap real quick. I think the game looks like a step up from Scarlet and Violet. The starters look goofy, and for wishes, I wish it had voice acting. I hope it doesn't repeat Scarlet and Violet in terms of disappointment. I hope it has some fun mechanics, and yeah, I don't have any last minute thoughts or wishes to add here. Honestly, if Game Freak plays their cards right, this could honestly be one of the best Pokemon games of all time. And I know it's too early to make an assumption like that, but hey, a guy can dream, right? Well, I believe that will be everything for this video. Are you hyped for Pokemon Winds and Waves? Leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed what you saw, please make sure to like and subscribe, and make sure to use the YouTube hype feature if you use a mobile device. And drop any feedback you may have in the comments. It would be greatly appreciated. I'll catch you in the next video. See ya and have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching.